Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. My name is Jean-Luc Constantine, and I am the president of the Saint Lucian Students Association at the UWI Cave Hill. I want to say a warm welcome to our UNICEF representative for the Eastern Caribbean, Mr. Jean-Benoit Mains, a senior education officer from the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mr. Henderson Wiltshire, our representative who will be joining us virtually, who is responsible for adolescent development, Mr. Liston Skerritt from UNICEF, the president of the Dominican Students Association at Cave Hill, Miss, I'm sorry for giving you the Mrs., Miss Shawnee Gordon, representatives who will be joining us from our Cave Hill Guild of Students, representatives from our other island associations, specially invited guests, members of the media. I bid you all a very, very good morning. We are looking forward to having a very enlightening, very fruitful discussion here today. I really want to hear your perspectives and the perspectives of the panelists, but before we do that, I want to invite up to the front Mr. Jean-Benoit Mains to give some short remarks. Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Archie Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer, Jean-Luc Constantine, and thanks for your name I can easily pronounce with my French accent. Young ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all today to this Activate talk, held in partnership with the University of the West Indies, Barbados National Students Council, and the Saint Lucian Students Association at Cave Hill. You're here to debate a topic that has profound implication for the success of our present and the future of our community, for society, nation, region. Simply put, do you, have an education system that fits its purpose, that prepare young people for the challenging new world they must navigate and conquer? Are we agile and flexible enough to offer an educational experience which encompasses the needs of all our children, regardless of their ability and aspiration? Well, I think there are different schools of thought about that, and today I will be glad to hear about them. Also, thankfully, access to education is a reality for most. The quality and inclusiveness of this education can be, let's say, variable. Following the COVID-19 pandemics, but also following some long structural cause, we are still trying to make up serious education deficits many children face, locked up out of schooling for months without the digital tools necessary to take part and keep it. And I wouldn't blame only the digital tools, because maybe the pedagogical approach, maybe the environment were not optimal either. In a sub-region, so not only in Barbados, too few students are achieving good enough results at secondary level, with only a third getting the qualification they need to move on to the next stage of academic life. In addition, the parameters of success can be too narrowly defined. It's not only, about becoming a lawyer. I think each of us has different aspiration, capacity, and society require many skills, many profiles, many ambitions. Those narrow ambitions don't allow all of our children to succeed in their own way, in their own terms. We know we need to do better, and I hope we know that we can do better. This is why we are committed as UNICEF and our education partners to project the transforming education approach, where we recognize that learning is not only, one exam that you succeed or fail. It's a lifeline to opportunity, inclusion, and resilience. And I'm well aware that in Barbados, you are embarking on the ambitious Reimagining Education project, aiming at promote a system which is inclusive, modern, and relevant. demanding nothing less than the brightest future possible for every child. It is truly transformational because, sometimes education systems are designed for the best, and, they provide elites, and those elites, I hope you are part of it, are very bright. However, many children are still left out, and it's our job also. When I say ours, not mine, it's our education colleagues, it's even yours, now and in your future, to include them. What would be the tertiary education our focus today? Yeah, but that's the result of a process. How do we navigate the challenges students face from transitioning from secondary to tertiary? And while we're waiting for you, we had a discussion that even transition from primary to secondary can already force children to engage in a way that they didn't choose or that's not fit for them. So remember, tertiary education can be a goal, but it's not a one-shot event. It's a process that unfortunately sometimes has been decided for you years and years in advance. So how do we navigate those challenges, transitioning from secondary to tertiary, whether academic or vocational? How do we also improve the school experience? Again, it's not about exam, it's about daily life. It's about daily environment, and to be sure that you are in a safe and encouraging system. How do we improve grades at the end of the day? Because you are still judged by grades. Can we access the technology and digital world in a way that can be democratized? What role does regional education integration and standardization play? And let me just insist on that, because we have to combine two challenges. We want all children to have the same chance, whether they are in Barbados, Saint Lucia, Grenada, whatever. So we want a regional coherence. We want all the same chances. At the same time, we don't want a one-size-fits-all approach, because all of you have your culture, your perspective, as I said before, your environment, and access to some specific education, which is not available everywhere. How do we ensure that children have access to meaningful participation? I'm too old for that. And our estimated colleague has a much, I would say, better sense of the challenges you faced. Yet, I think that the only one who know those challenges are yourself. And we need to learn from that, which is not easy because in all the world, education systems have been designed to be slightly top-down. We already see young people getting involved in shaping education, and I think your presence today demonstrates that. But how do we encourage more of this? And how do we ensure that it's not just, organizing a meeting in a nice hall, listening to you and moving to something else? How do we ensure that all the feedback, the questions, the suggestions you get, are integrated in policy reforms, are integrated in concrete change for children, whether in school or out of school, whether at tertiary, secondary, or primary level? So for me, it's key because, I've been delivering many similar speeches. And I hate attending those speeches myself if I don't think that what you will be telling me, what you will be telling us, is really taken into account. So there are plenty of questions, but together, let's propose some answer. We won't have the answers to everything today, but we will record, we'll compile, we will relay, we will advocate, not only me, our colleagues in education, definitively. And let's explore the current landscape and maybe the future landscape, the desired landscape, the optimal landscape, and suggest way in which its contours may be successfully navigated. Maybe we cannot solve all problems. Maybe we can go around some. And I think that you have better idea than me on that. I therefore wish you a fruitful Activate talk. And that's the last time you will hear about me talking, because from now on, it will be about you. It's great to see young leaders sharing ideas, experience, and strategies. And again, I look forward, but I'm not the only one, our education colleagues, my own colleagues, to hearing you about your thoughtful and creative solutions that will carry you, that will carry other children, which is more important, into the shining future that we all so richly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those very, very welcoming remarks. Thank you for the well wishes today. So we're going to move straight into the discussion right now. And for us to do so, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And I will begin first with Ms. Karina Blash, who represents the Grenadian Students Association as the president. Could we put our hands together for her, please? Next, we have from the Barbados National Students Council, the first vice president, Mr. Callan Aline. And last but definitely not least, from the Trinidad and Tobago Students Association, we have the president, Mr. Aki Morales. And for this discussion, I will be the moderator. So just to begin the discussion off, our topic here for today, as you guys know, is navigating the challenges of higher education in the Eastern Caribbean and how the importance of regional integration can be a viable solution to curbing these issues. So I want to start off by asking our panelists, essentially, what does higher education mean to you? And I mean, we have two panelists here who currently attend the University of the West Indies and one prospective panelist that is looking to go towards higher education. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered so far? Karina?
Okay, so for me, higher education is essentially any form of tertiary education beyond secondary school. Thus far, well, my journey to UWI has been tumultuous, to say the least. It was definitely not an easy road. From the application process, come right up, it has been a challenge. That coupled with the transition of being, or well, the phenomenon of being a regional student in another country, that is also an issue that you have to take into consideration when pursuing higher education. It's not just about focusing on your schoolwork. It's no longer you have your family and your siblings to help out. You have to cook for yourself, clean for yourself. Make sure that you do what is needed so that you can succeed along your academic journey. So that's just two challenges that I have personally experienced thus far.
Akeem?
So yeah, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Tertiary education for me is a constant, ongoing process. As Karina mentioned, I share the same sentiments as a regional student. I no longer have my grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, anyone to take care of me. So not only do I have to study, but I have to cook, clean, wash, get up, go to school, do everything on my own, basically, to ensure that my education is not impacted. So tertiary education for me is an ongoing process where, we learn every day. Coming from Trinidad and Tobago, in a new country, it's an experience of its own.
Callan?
For me, higher education is, as Karina would have said, any education past the secondary level. I am currently a prospective student for next year to attend a higher education institution. For me, the process as of current is very difficult and very stressing. And I believe that persons around my age are very stressed around this time and are unaware as to what exactly are the next steps to take and how exactly do I go about getting my higher education, what's the best route to take, just how do I do this and what should I do and when should I do it. So that for me, I think there should be a case where we have national workshops to ensure that persons do know what to do and ensure that persons know what to do when it comes to higher education to ensure that they have the best opportunity for them that can be afforded.
So, in essence, what I'm getting is that we have issues that stem from both personal challenges and challenges with applications and, actually getting the opportunities to progress to higher higher education institutes. And I want to clarify now that when we speak of higher education, we don't just speak of formal academic education, as in you attend the University of the West Indies and you get your bachelor's in law or in economics, etc. But we also speak of vocational studies. We speak of our trade subjects. We speak of mechanics, electrical engineering, our plumbers, because these are very important aspects of our society. So we have representatives here from Trinidad, Barbados, and Grenada. They come from three very different economies, reliant on very different things, and they all have different barriers that they have had to face and come in. I know Trinidad has the GATE program, which can alleviate many of these stresses. I know that the Barbadian nationals, typically, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have to pay the full cost of your education if you attend the University of the West Indies and at Cave Hill, and Grenada as well. They're making it on their own. So
Recently, the government has started to offer assistance with the economic cost, but everything else is usually
okay,
fend for yourself.
but that is good to hear. So keeping that in mind, what I want to address is, in terms, we have 5th and 6th form students here. In our countries across the Caribbean, we've recognized that there's a lack of standardization of 6th forms. These 6th forms, many of which being essential to continuing and pursuing higher education in the region. What are your thoughts on the lack of standardization of 6th forms within the Caribbean, and how do you think that this affects the ability of students to progress onto these institutions? The floors are yours.
Okay, so in Grenada, we actually don't have 6th form. I didn't know what is 6th form until I started interacting with Bajans and persons from other Caribbean islands. I believe it's like the equivalent of community college for us. Right. So I think that there needs to be a bit more structure and direction in terms of what happens next and what is being taught at the 6th form / community college level. So for us, in Grenada, we have the T.A. Marichaud Community College, where you get your associate's degree. I was appalled in my 2nd year when I learned that a lot of my friends were not doing CAPE. They were just simply relying on their associate's degree, which when you go further, you would realize it's not really that significant. It really holds no value as a degree. Even in terms of accreditation for Grenada, is only recently, like in 2022, that TAMCC was actually accredited or started being accredited for certain courses. So I think that is a very big issue that undoubtedly affects us as Grenadians, not only in the local job market, but regionally as well. And so I think there needs to be a bit more emphasis placed on the curriculum. There needs to be a greater push to encourage persons to actually do CAPE at those levels rather than just simply relying on the associate's degree. So that is my bit on that.
In Trinidad and Tobago, I would say that the CAPE program, getting into the CAPE program is not standardized first to begin with, because I know a lot of persons who finish CSEC without qualifications to even do CAPE program end up in the CAPE program system because of personal relationships with the school and the principal and stuff like that. So let's say, for instance, I do CSEC and I fail CSEC math or English or even all, persons still end up in the CAPE community, and they are disadvantaged because they do not have the qualifications to even get into the CAPE program. And schools accept these students to play cricket, to play football, to do other stuff to, basically build the school and not necessarily build the student. And so I think that's a problem that the CAPE and the CSEC level education in Trinidad and Tobago has. Like, the standardization of the qualifications to even do the CAPE programs. And other students are also disadvantaged because if I can play cricket, but I don't have maths and English to even do the CAPE program, but Jean-Luc has maths and English, but he can't play cricket, he can't play football to save his life. So the school rejects Jean-Luc and accepts me to build the accreditations of the school, not necessarily the development of the students. So I think that's one issue. As a person who didn't do CAPE, I can't necessarily say what are the challenges in the CAPE education level. So I went straight to UWI, I did my pre-science degree, I got an associate's, and then I came and did my bachelor's. So I can't really speak, but that's one major issue I find in the CAPE program in Trinidad and Tobago.
As a current CAPE student myself, it is extremely stressing. I think that's the first thing to note, that when you're doing sixth form, you are doing CAPE subjects. CAPE is tumultuous and it does take a lot of work from you. On the point of standardization, it's the same here in Barbados, where certain schools have different entry requirements depending on the program, and then there's also the case where certain sixth form schools offer certain subjects and others don't. So before we even look at all schools offering sixth form, we have to look at the ones that currently offer sixth form, if we can get all of them to offer all the same subjects. For example, Harrison College, you more so go there for science CAPE subjects. Queen's College, more so for business, stuff like that. And for St. Michael, we do business, law, and humanities and stuff like that. So even before, like I said, look at standardizing across the board, you have to look at what is already there and ensure that those are standardized as well.
Okay, so it's interesting that we've placed a direct focus on CAPE in discussion with the sixth form, because one of the major discussions that has been going on within the Caribbean comes to do with CXC and essentially the idea of the, I guess, gap between CXC and the transition into higher university education. I mean, many students often find themselves in one of two positions where they do the syllabus at CXC and then are forced to repeat the same CXC syllabus when they're entering into university. So it seems like a waste of time as to why did I have to do CXC to begin with? And then we have students who feel as if the CXC syllabus does not properly equip them to transition into these higher learning institutions. So I have also taken note of, over the years, the continuing decline in core subjects at the CXC level, particularly in areas that I think are essential, such as mathematics, social studies, literature, these important courses. My two questions, therefore, are, one, what do you think are the main factors that contribute towards these declining core subjects, the grades within these core subjects? And two, how can CXC better improve or work with higher education institutions to ensure that their syllabuses are cohesive between the two institutions to allow for a smoother transitioning process within the Caribbean?
I think that society and CSEC on the whole puts a lot of pressure on math and English and these core subjects for students to be able to pass them. It's a lot of pressure for students, okay, I do 8 subjects, 9 subjects, but I have to pass math, I have to pass English, otherwise, what's next? Like, I have to go back and repeat math and English, but I have 5 other subjects. So what I'm saying, and in my discussions, you'll hear me focusing a lot about sport, art, music, and culture. I think that students should be granted the opportunity to do what they want. I'm not saying exclude math and English, it's a mandatory course. But when students find a passion in doing what they want from an early age, not necessarily because your grades throughout the secondary school level does not equip you to do science subjects, or your grades does not equip you to do modern studies, or find niches in person's interests and spikes person's interests and not necessarily force subjects upon them to do what necessarily the school wants them to do, or more rather than what they want to do, so that way they feel more comfortable and more enjoy in the secondary school level, basically, because I hate studying something I don't like. I have to do out-of-faculty courses, and I just doing it because it fits into my syllabus, in my schedule, and I have to do it, but I don't like studying for it. It's the same thing for every secondary school student. I'm sure you guys don't like studying things you don't like. So basically, I am saying get, programs and subjects that students feel more comfortable doing. That way, it eases the tension and the pressure of actually trying to study, actually wanting to study for like the core subjects, math and English, when you are already studying for things that you like, you can relate to, and basically that will improve overall discipline in studying and moving forward to like focusing on core subjects, math, English, social studies, what have you.
I think the conversation about decreased performance in subjects like math and English stems deeper to the point that we do need to have, especially with the conversation, education transformation in Barbados, is more project-based learning, and not everyone learns the same way, and we do have to cater to each individual need. It may be hard, but it is possible. So when we say that there's decreased performance, we have to realize why, and that's why, simple. On the point of integration between CXC and universities, CXC is an accredited organization. And for example, if you do CAPE economics and you get above a grade 3, when you then come to UWI, you get exempted from certain courses from the thing. So I think then it's a conversation where CXC then has to communicate with universities outside of the region, outside of Barbados, to ensure that that is then done throughout, where it's then, as you said, is not being repeated and persons don't feel as if they're wasting their time.
Just to add, to piggyback off of your last point, so there's a mandatory course that we have to do here at the university, which is Caribbean history. I have a grade 1 CAPE, a grade 1 in history, CAPE. And the university is telling me I cannot get an exemption from the course. I actually have to have like a bachelor's in history or an entire degree based in history in order to get exempted from an elective course. Well, it's a mandatory course, but it's not part of my law degree in order to get exempted. That to me, there's a lot of work could be done. Similarly, I started my degree online with the University of London. I completed certain courses and then I was like, this online stuff is not for me. Let me go in person, let me try the University of the West Indies. And then they're telling me my credits from a university like the University of London cannot be transferred here. So I think that's a gap that also needs a lot of bridging. However, in terms of some of the reasons that might actually be contributing towards the high failure rates, I think that there has been a lasting legacy from COVID-19, which I would say have encouraged us to be a bit over-reliant on technology. So for instance, they give you an essay in class today, you don't even think about the topic. The first thing you think to do is to run and plug it in ChatGPT, put it in Copilot, in order to get suggestions as opposed to using what you know. Like you don't have, it's like you've become so dependent on the technology or even during our classes, no, Angelique, you know that. If they reschedule a class, the first thing we asking is it online? Because you don't even want to come to school anymore. So I think that it has caused us to be a bit complacent, and for a subject like mathematics, you can't just use AI. You need to actually use your brain and use your own skills and efforts. And so I think that is one of the reasons that may be contributing. Another instance, in Grenada specifically, for the past couple years, 2 to 4 years, there has been an ongoing industrial action in Grenada. So teachers have decided, you know what, we're just going to work the rule. People went through their 5 years of secondary school without having any co-curricular activities, any sports, any form of thing, because teachers were striking and working to rule and going slow and that sort of stuff. So I think in that regard, that is also something to take into consideration. In terms of how CXC can bridge that gap, I think there has to be a bit more involvement from the region in terms of curriculum development and changes. Sometimes you change the syllabus, but there's no that kind of in-person direct connection. There's no overarching support, no training to the lecturers who are then expected to teach the students. Because sometimes it's like a teacher, they've been teaching for 20 years, they've been accustomed to doing one thing, and then you spring this thing on, this new subject area on them, and then they're basically left up to their own selves to come up with new material and that sort of stuff. So I think that if there's any adjustments to the syllabus and so, CXC can provide some overarching support. Also, I think that we could kind of free up the past papers now. You don't have to feel like you're committing some kind of big crime when you're trying to find a past paper for a course. You have to go and hack there, screenshot the first page from here. You know, I think that these are resources that can actually be made free so that persons could, prepare themselves a bit better.
I just had one thing to say. As my colleague mentioned, more project-based, more hands-on experiences in learning, curriculum modernization. I hate the classroom, and quite frankly, if I could go to class and just come to the exams, I would. But because honestly, it's getting boring. It's getting repetitive. We come to class every day, sit down, listen, read, write. It's getting a lot boring. I'm a biochemistry student. I spend more time in the classroom than I spend in the lab. I spend more time in the classroom than I spend in the field. So it's getting a lot more boring. It's getting very, very tiring. And I think that things are being done to create that hands-on experience. I was here in the summer and I saw some students on Frank, well, that's the accommodations there, attached to the SPICE program, which is the student program for innovation in science and engineering. And these are students between the ages of 16 and 18 from secondary schools who come to Barbados in the university where they put on like a program to create, hands-on experience for these individuals to, learn something in their interest, basically, in science and engineering. So I think more hands-on. Not everybody likes the classroom. Not everybody are nerds to sit down and read and write over and over. So I think the repetitive learning system is becoming a bit tiring and overwhelming for students.
And just to add, in relation to that point, I think that that's also a big part of the problem in terms of the examination method or the weighting. So imagine you have a subject like English, and it's only just about 5 or 6 years ago, you implemented an oral aspect to English, which is what we speak every day. I know persons, mental math on point, but if you give them a paper and pen and ask them to show me your work in, they won't even know where to start. So I think that some alternative options for examination can be examined or can be explored. If it's a case where you have some persons, they're functionally literate, so they can speak the responses to the exam, but they may not be able to read or write, which would go back to early education. But exploring alternative options, especially for persons who are more hands-on learners or they have a skill or so, I think that that could be something that the region could explore. There will be challenges, but it's an option.
Okay, so with everything that has just been said, there are two primary follow-ups that I have. And in terms of the very last point that you just mentioned, Karina, then it's what, aside from any programs that you already know, that you panelists already know within your country, within the region, internationally, what do you suggest can be undertaken in terms of early intervention programs to assist students in better developing these foundational skills that they seem to lack, which is why, there's this gap between, the mental maths and the written maths, etc. And two is we heard a lot of discussion about modernizing the curriculum, and a lot of talks about standardization also. But, I mean, in terms of modernizing the curriculum, whilst we all, or most of the Caribbean does, CSEC, does CAPE, does the different lines of exams that fall underneath CXC, much of our curriculums have different focuses, we have different point places. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, as we must have curriculums that fit our national needs, our national identities. That is something that I very strongly believe. but how can we help them better to standardize this CXC curriculum across the region to allow for a better improvement of our students?
Okay, that was a bit long-winded. So I'll take the first part, which is what
You're a
I
law
can
student.
remember right
You'll
now.
deal with it.
So it had to do with early educational intervention. I think it begins from, of course, I could see the societal level, which is where parents need to, from a young age, buy educational books, educational toys. You read to your child daily, that sort of stuff. But on a more institutionalized level, I think generally in the region there's a lack of appreciation for early childhood education. Education would normally begin from 3 or 5 years. For some, it's 5 years when you just start primary school. For some who go to daycare and that sort of stuff, it might be 3 years or so. But I think there needs to be a bit more training for professionals to be able to provide that form of early childhood development. In fact, I have a quote here from UNESCO, which basically said that early childhood care and education is more than preparation for primary school. It aims at the holistic development of a child's social, emotional, cognitive, and physical needs in order to build a solid and broad foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. So I think that there needs to be a bit more emphasis on training persons and a bit of appreciation for early childhood education in the region. Also, I think there's also a problem where we need to destigmatize certain learning disabilities. Sometimes you're not grasping a concept because you have ADHD, or you're dyslexic, or you have some form of other cognitive ability, but we feel that if you go and actually get it tested out and actually get a diagnosis from a doctor, people go start to call you dunce. Or, we start to call you these kind of derogatory terms. But sometimes you just need to appreciate that sometimes learning disabilities have a part to play in why you're unable to grasp a concept, and you may need a bit more special focus. It's okay to have extra classes. It's okay to, do this form of early intervention methods. And I don't remember what the last part was.
That's okay. Callan?
For me, on the point of the different learning styles and stuff, the first thing we were talking about,
Yes.
can't
Early
say,
intervention programs,
Right.
and then the standardization of the curriculum.
right. For me, the same way how when you're entering secondary school, you have to go get an injection to ensure you can enter school. It's the same way for primary school. You can go to the same polyclinics and get a diagnosis for mental disabilities, learning challenges, different stuff like that, to ensure that then the school then caters for your needs and ensure that you are taught the way in which is best for you. So that is a option that we can look at for when we're thinking about how do we ensure that this child may not be doing the best in school, but how then can we get this child to do the best that they can. The next thing on the point of regional integration for broader access, we need to advocate for Caribbean integration, allowing shared standards and improve access to educational and career opportunities across the region. And that does start from CXC to ensure that it's not just Barbados, it's not just Trinidad, it's not just Grenada, it's not just St. Vincent. We are all together. And while we are looking at the integration from an economic standpoint, we also have to look at it from an education standpoint.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is that I want to step down a little bit from secondary and go a little earlier in the ages, right? I think it takes a community to build a child. And I think it has to start from there. Early intervention programs, yes, when we get to secondary school levels, the government and the education ministries are trying their best to do what they can, but they do it today. Today is Friday, they do it Friday next year, and they do it Friday in 2027, and then they do it irregularly. So I think the everyday living experience of a community where, you know, you have your parents, the older folks in the community, they are responsible. They play a crucial part in a child's life. And in the early stages of a child, they are most plastic, they are most vulnerable to development. They tend to learn faster because of the brain and how the brain works. And I think it takes a community, even outside of the classroom. I can speak for this. I teach music and math after schools and on Saturdays and Fridays to students who are interested, free of course. This is not the government, this is the school, asking me to do a favor, and I am more than willing to do so for students under the age of 12 and 13 to, develop. And these are things that we need to develop children, not in the classroom reading all the time, counting all the time, but music, sport, arts, culture. They have a tutor that teach them dance and drumming, and all of these different things are responsible, and the community itself is responsible for developing a child's literacy and numeracy. It develops a discipline in that child. So when they go to the classroom, they can then focus to do what they are supposed to do. Think about regional integration in the education system. I would say UE is a big step. UE is a big step to getting that regional integration in the system. I mean, there are campuses, there are 5 campuses across the region. And I think it might seem a big fetch, but more campuses in other different parts of the region can further integrate the community. And I think more specific country-based research and development can also develop the regional integration, because there are problems in our countries like Barbados. There's a chicken shortage. There's like a food security issue, but there's no agricultural program at UE, to help students to research and develop strategies and ideas, and these research can then be published to governments to actually aid their research, their side of things. But I think there's an agricultural system in Trinidad. Why can't we, have inter-region exchange of students? We often see students leaving Cave Hill to go to Canada. We often see students leaving Cave Hill to go to China, and all these different places that, they are more inclined to these things. Why can't we do inter-region exchange programs? Students from St. Augustine come here, students from even Grenada, these universities there, and come and exchange the knowledge that they have about a particular issue that might help develop the country and not just think about ourselves.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. What I want to do right now is just transition a bit. With us virtually, we have the UNICEF Adolescent Development Specialist, Mr. Liston Scarrett. And I just want to invite him quickly just to give some remarks on what we've said thus far before we continue our conversation.
Thanks, John-Luc. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So thanks for putting together the group of scholars you have there on the panel. As simple as you see it, the feedback that you're giving here this morning is actually what we would call a bottleneck analysis. And it's the lived experience of students who have been through the system and are identifying challenges. So I just want to highlight potentially maybe 2 areas of consideration. The first is that a theme I keep hearing there is for career advising. Perhaps whether we see an emergence now of counselors and therapists in the secondary school space helping with mental health. But maybe we need to look at a more formal structure where there is career advising to help students navigate some of these challenges. The selection of A levels versus associate degrees, what subjects transfer, what subjects don't transfer. And when we look to some of the metropolitan jurisdictions, that's one of the things they have that help their students to be more successful. And I think there's definitely a space there through whether it's University of West Indies or other tertiary institutions, technical or vocational, because it goes back to students are now defining success very differently. And the process of how you become successful is very different now than it was in our parents' era, right? There was no TikTok or Twitch. And so certain career fields were just not imaginable. And so it's something for us to consider. The second part, though, and to the students in the room who are watching and taking in the feedback, I think you should take away from this conversation on the panel that as you're making these decisions, consult. talk to older siblings, talk to cousins, talk to uncles. One of the gentlemen made the point of it takes a village. And it does take a village. Sometimes it is a happenstance conversation at the supermarket. It's that person in the village who's known you since you were a baby. It's your godmother or godfather who provides, immeasurable advice. And so you're in that stage now, for those in the room and for the persons who will be listening to this, that you'll always be surprised who will leave the nugget of advice that sets you on a career path. And I'll end with just saying this. For me, coming out of high school, I got placed into what we call the social services department, and they did everything from summer schools to helping with social protection. And fast forward a few years, not might be that many. But I now work, supporting young people, children, adolescent, youth across the Caribbean in those very same areas: education, life skills, social protection, child protection, climate. And so you'll be surprised what experience you have will define your future. But just leaving you with the two nuggets. One, I think a takeaway for us at UNICEF from your informal bottleneck analysis is, how do we provide more structured career services? And just want to underscore the importance of looking to persons in your community, friends and family, for guidance as you make some of these important decisions, which are important but not the end of the world, because you can always change and evolve as society does. All the best.
Thank you so much, Liston. As always, your insights are very, very much appreciated. I also want to invite, also before we continue this conversation, Mr. Henderson Wiltshire to share some remarks on what has been said. You're a senior education officer, and I think that your insights would also be very helpful to continue in this conversation.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I just want to commend the panel for the thoughts shared and the experiences that they have put forward in terms of this at this juncture in terms of education. Very insightful. When they were speaking, also came across my mind was this whole notion of career guidance. It was mentioned in a different format there, but career guidance is important in terms of our students, in terms of how they perform and how they look forward to university life and life in general. So the career guidance, I think, is something that we have to look at. Some years ago, we actually had a consultancy in the Ministry of Education to look at career guidance in secondary schools. So I think it's come up again for discussion, so it's something that we have to look at again. In terms of, interesting to note that across the Caribbean, that CAPE is used in different formats in terms of getting a person into secondary school. In Barbados, we have a format where students apply online, and then based on what is offered at the school, then they will go into that school or be accepted in that school for CAPE courses. Was mentioned earlier by the gentleman from St. Michael's about having each school offer similar subjects in terms of CAPE subjects. It's an interesting thought, something that has been looked at in terms of sixth form schools, but some of the challenges will include facilities and also staffing as well. But it's something that's possible that can be explored, but in terms of capacity of schools also, in terms of numbers that can be accommodated in institutions and schools, that will also have to be addressed as well. One thing I would like to ask the panel to discuss further as we go on is technical and vocational education. And if, in their opinion, if institutions, tertiary institutions, offer the level and the certification that is requisite now for technical and vocational education. So I would like to hear the panel's discussion on that. And also, finally, in terms of integration, CXC, in terms of education, can be a format for integrating. So I would suggest that at some point in time, when there is COSOD, which is an annual meeting on education and technical vocational education, where ministers of education meet, that some of these proposals, if UNICEF could ask for an opportunity to speak there, where they can share some of these views on education, on what they would like to see in education in the Caribbean, I think that would be a good avenue to speak to ministers of education in terms of regional integration from using education as to integrate regionally. But I know regional integration has been a challenge for years in the Caribbean. You take one step forward and two steps back. So it'd be good if UNICEF or any organization could arrange for the panel or representatives from the panel to speak to ministers of education when they meet at COSA. And I think that will help in terms of forwarding their suggestions and their points, and that could be meaningful and useful as well. Yeah, so that's my points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wiltshire. So what we'll do right now is we'll actually head into this question that was posed to the panelists, and then following that, we will open the floor to you guys, the audience, to ask the panel some questions, get some insights, and we could have this very interactive discussion as was promised. So would you guys like me to reiterate the question? Because I also have a point that I wanted to add also to it. So aside from just the standard of TVET within the Caribbean currently, after noting the standard, what are your solutions as to how we can expand the opportunities available to students looking to go into areas of technical and vocational training? Okay, so in Grenada, I think that we have made significant strides in terms of embracing TVET, technical and vocational education training. So since primary school days, we used to have what we call, there was like a center where on Thursdays and Tuesdays, different schools would go there to learn woodwork. So we had classes for woodwork, technical drawing, and home economics. It would be every week. And so since early, we had that form of embracing. At the college level, we actually have an entire department, the School of Applied Arts and Technology, where they offer culinary, food and beverage, hospitality, mechanics, plumbing, even HVAC, which is heat, ventilation, and air conditioning. So they teach these things, and you can actually get an associate's degree in that area. We also have the New Life organization, which is also a tertiary institution in Grenada, strictly focusing on vocational education. So in that regard, I think that there are many opportunities. However, I still believe that there is this stigma surrounding vocational education, that, it's not on the same level as academics, or that, if you go to NULO instead of TAMCC, people would look at you differently, that sort of thing. So the only point of improvement, I think, is that we need to embrace it a bit more, because really and truly, skilled workers are getting paid more than persons with it's true, because you fix one car and you make my whole salary. You working now, I have to start working in 5 years after I finish my law degree, after I pass the bar, after I do this, and your bank account done pack up fat from fixing an AC or fixing, So I think that a more general discussion needs to be had in terms of destigmatizing the vocational education. And also another point of improvement would be offering it at a higher level. So for instance, you could come here to do law and business and chemistry and all these fancy stuff, but you can't come here to do agriculture, or you can't come here to do plumbing, or you can't come here to do, like those sorts of subjects. I mean, persons in those areas themselves also believe that, once I have the skill, I don't really need no certification, and it takes me far. But I think that whole societal perspective on those areas needs to be reworked and rethought.
Yeah, this is a great question by the senior education officer. In my school, where I went to school in Barbados West Secondary, and I've been doing tech ed. We call it TVAP. TVET, right. But we know it as tech ed. I've been doing tech ed since Form 1. I've been welding since Form 1. I've been there. So they split us up into different. So who wants to do welding? The women will more do garment construction and cooking. We have welding, plumbing, auto mechanics. So we would have been doing these things since Form 1. However, it was a free period for us. We would just go, well something, it was 2 periods, so in that 2 hours, and you just liming, right? The supervision was poor. The school didn't play or much time or put much emphasis in the actual subjects. The only time they put the emphasis in the subjects is when you reach your Form 4 and Form 5, and we have something called CVQ. I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's CVQ, right? And the CVQ is where students who choose to do engineering and those kind of subjects, they would have their focus is that, just like how I will focus on chemistry, biology, they will focus on like welding, auto mechanics, and those kind of stuff. So that's the only time that it will be, you know, serious. And as Karina said, the stigma behind it was never a good one. You will often find the school placing students to do these subjects. They will label them as dunce or slow learners or all kind of derogatory terms, I would say. But I think that I wanted to do engineering, and the dean told me, "You're too smart for that." Like, what do you mean? I want to do engineering. I want to weld. I wanted to do underwater welding for a while, and I thought it would have been a good step. But he said, "You're too smart for that." Here I'm struggling with science. And so I think that it needs to be a more crucial, a more emphasized subject area to students at the secondary school level. And as the minister, the senior education officer said, it's a struggle for facilities and staffing because not all schools in Trinidad and Tobago have it. More so the government schools where they are 100% government funded, you will find these courses. More in the Catholic schools, the presentation colleges, and the convents, they are more strictly academics because the government doesn't put much emphasis financially and facility-wise for these students in these prestigious schools to do these subjects. After secondary school, however, you can enroll yourself in YTEP, which is Youth Training Empowerment Program, right? So the YTEP, I learned to cook there. I went there from like the age of 13, and they would have home management courses, early childhood care, food and nutrition for persons to enroll themselves from a very young age, and it's free of charge. And these are the times where you see the communities, the persons who are not too inclined in the classroom. It's swarmed with these persons, and it just goes to show that not everyone is suited for the classroom because you have in these programs after school, and it's well attended. It's a lot of persons, you know, come out, they cook, they do whatever they have to do, and they learn in that kind of environment. So I think it's a avenue that the government could continue to take, and NESC as well. NESC is a program, I'm not sure what it means again. It's a program where persons who leave secondary school, they can go to NESC and learn oil rigging, and it's well attended as well. So persons get up, it's like school, university, persons get up, they put on their coveralls every morning, and you see them traversing the streets. Yeah, I mean, these persons trying to make a living outside of the classroom, and that is what they like. But again, persons who go to NESC, you often tend to stigmatize them and say, oh, they are dunce, they are slow learners, but that is what they want to do, that is what they can do, and that is how they see their future going forward. So more emphasis needs to play on that. Electrical engineering, you can all do that at NESC, and it's gate funded as well. It's gate funded as well. So you apply for gate and you go to NESC to further develop your skills technically and vocationally. So I think the government is doing what they can do, as again, there are a lot of challenges as we are, let's say, SIDS, small island developing states, and we can improve on facilities and infrastructure and staffing as well. And I hope we touch on brain drain so we can tackle that issue. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I think the Barbadian government has made strides to improve the TVAT program, particularly with St. George Secondary School offering courses in agriculture and stuff like that on the secondary level, and then with the SJPI in Wildy side, which then is another place where you can then have higher education in these particular courses and subjects to ensure that you then if you are not able to do this subject, math and English, you're able to do this. Because realistically speaking, going back to when we said earlier, different people learn different ways. So then if you learn a different way, obviously you can't then it will be hard for you to then be a lawyer, to be a doctor. So not everyone is suited for those roles. So then we then have to look at ways to then continue this path to ensure that we continue to have this involvement for persons across the board and ensure that everyone is included within our education system. Going on to the point of Karina, especially during COVID, Barbados is heavily reliant on tourism when it comes to making money. But we would have realized in COVID that tourism cannot be sustainable at all points in time. And we would have realized that persons within these sectors, within TVAT, are making more money, not just now, but also back then, particularly back then, with most persons laid off and at home, unemployed, and NAS can only do so much, and then it then affects it across the board. So it is important, it is essential, and you both would have spoken about it not being taken seriously and the stigma. I believe it is connected for sure, because the persons may not take it seriously because it is seen, as you said, persons who do these courses are seen as less educated, they're seen as slow, but that's not the case. It's just that you don't learn the same way that I do, because for example, you may not be able to do math and English, I may be able to do math and English, but you can do engineering, I cannot. So I think it's not that I'm slow or anything like that, I think that it's just a case of I am not able to do the same thing as you are.
Just to add one more thing, I think that so short like certificates and stuff could be offered to persons doing these technical things, because sometimes it's like you're just there, you're going through these programs, and then you have nothing to show for it. You are capable, but you know, you go to apply to like a formal company and they ask you, okay, well, you say you've been doing this for 5 years, where's your certification? Or so I think that providing, even if it's short courses or just some form of certificate of acknowledgement of, you know, that you've been in this program or these sorts of things. And that also takes me back to the point I was making about the waiting for some of the CSEC subjects. Because why do you have a vocational subject and the technical aspect of it is only worth 30%, while the theory is worth 70, or, you know, why not do it a bit more equal or seen as if it's a more hands-on course? Why not have the practical part worth 60 and the theory worth 40 to give persons a more or a fairer opportunity in the landscape? Yeah.
So that is definitely some food for thought. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the mic right now, open up the floor to some questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to make your way over to this mic here, and let's hear your thoughts. Let's have some discussion with the panelists. Are we all shy in here today? So when you're asking, you could just state your name and if you're a student, what school you're from also.
Okay, good morning. My name is Anya, and I am a student of Harrison College. I just want to first start by commenting on the fact that I'm really happy that the area of vocational and technical field was brought up, because my field of interest and the career that I'm looking to pursue is actually tourism and hospitality. And I'm not gonna lie, my career path kind of wavered especially coming into sixth form, where I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. But then I think it was like coming right to having to pick my subjects, because I'm more of a humanities student, and as you see, I go to Harrison College. And it was more of like trying to figure out, okay, what subjects do I choose? And that was actually brought up. So for me, when I think of tourism and hospitality, I was thinking, okay, history, and I'm really good at history. So I said, okay, I'll pick that. English, I'm also really good at essays, so I said I would pick that. And then I'm also doing computer science because I wanted to, you know, I thought I could integrate that into tourism, building a business, etc. However, I then came to realize that geography is actually the subject that is doing tourism as part of their curriculum. So I think my question or a suggestion would be more so allowing persons to know what is it that each subject entails specific to their career, because we spoke about career preparedness and having persons understand what it is they need for those careers, because I feel as if there's certain subjects that could have better catered to my career, and I don't know if there's a way that we can have subjects like history introduced, how can we then make it more catered to my career path, or even introducing a subject or a syllabus that caters more specific to certain careers, especially the humanities and the vocational and those stigmatized subjects, and across all school levels. So even if I want to stay at Harrison College, it shouldn't be that I have to go to a different school, as was said, to go and pursue or prepare for this career.
Thank you so much, Anya. Panelists, we have anything to add?
The only thing that I would add is I think that, like we mentioned before, not just career guidance, but also academic advising. Academic advising could go such a long way in avoiding a lot of hiccups and causing persons to have to repeat courses or stop this and come back for an additional year, and that's what, because I think at the secondary school level, I know back home, there's virtually no academic advising for secondary school. You reach to Form 3, and then you're required to pick subjects, and you basically just out there by yourself. You just pick what you feel like it. And then you reach to community college and realize, oh, I should have done history if I wanted to do law, or I should have done this if I did. So I think that, again, this is another discussion that has to be had. Teachers, even if they get persons from the Ministry of Education to come in to have sessions on academic advising when students reach that pivotal point in their educational journey.
One thing I have to add is, when I was picking subjects in secondary school, I was academically advised, wrongly. Yeah? I wanted to do engineering, as I said, and the teacher said, no, I can't do that. Too smart for that. So I think that, as Karina said, proper academic advising, when you're picking your subjects. I also believe in DIY. Do it yourself. Utilize the internet, utilize TikTok, get persons who in the same field as you and try to see what they do, what they associate themselves with on a daily basis, to try and have an idea as to what you would like to do, and subscribe to scholarly websites and subscribe to these, things on the internet. Do your research and try to find, if nobody else does it for you, who else would do it? So try and do it yourself.
I think another important note is not just career guidance, but also the fact, as you said, your career choices would have wavered over the years. I wanted to be an accountant in first form. Then I wanted to be a doctor. Then I wanted to be a lawyer. I chose law for sixth form. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. So I think it's also a fact that we have to look at when we choose these subjects, how then do we have to make sure that we have the ability to not just be stuck in this career choice for the rest of our life, because our interests do change over time, and we do change as a person, and our interests do change. So I think that's another important thing to note, to look at how do we then choose subjects that, yes, cater to a certain career, but also allow us to be able to shift into something else in the event that we feel to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you, Anya.
All righty, good morning. So my name is Josiah Boval. I'm a sixth form student of the Commonwealth School. And my question will be specifically for the speaker from Grenada. Earlier, when you were talking, you mentioned that Grenadian schools don't typically carry sixth form, and you only were familiar with it when you came here. But then you also mentioned that you did do CAPE, and you were wondering why students were opting to just do the associate's degree and not do CAPE as well. But in Barbados, we really only do CAPE at sixth form level, or you can also do it privately. So I was wondering if you do CAPE at the community college that you have alongside with the associate's degree, or you did have to do it privately to achieve those goals?
Yes, so we don't have sixth form. However, we have a community college where we spend 2 years, and it's only when you reach at the community college level that you have the option of doing CAPE alongside the associate's degree.
Okay. So if you do the CAPE at the community college and you wanted to do an associate's degree course at that same college, would you be allowed to apply again and do the associate's course as well at the same place, or you would need to go to somewhere else?
You can do it at the same place, yeah.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Jazara, for that question. Do we have any other questions?
All right. It was definitely a fruitful discussion. I'm Shauna Lee Gordon, President of the Dominican Students Association here at Cave Hill. And, well, my question is more in relation, to how it works in your islands. for example, I know for Dominica, when it comes to studying at pursuing like an undergraduate degree, where it comes to bachelor's and master's and stuff like that, emphasis on going to UE or avenues to pursue your degree at UE is, I would say, we have less emphasis on it as opposed to going to international institutions. So I want to know your thoughts on it, because I really do believe that UE is a great source of regional integration for a region. So I would want to know how it is in your islands, and what do you think if it is that it's the same way, what do you think our governments could do to kind of improve that and encourage more students to go to UE, because it is a great education and it's also cheaper for most students.
In Grenada, it is the same. If you want to come to UE, you basically have to go and make gallant efforts on your own to find out, okay, how do I get there? What programs do they offer? Meanwhile, you're having a session on how to get to the University of Illinois and I'm like, but we have a university within the region that is cheaper, more accessible, the pinnacle of regional integration. In fact, as I am the president of Grensac, it is literally up to us to have information sessions with students at TAMCC to encourage them and to persuade them as to why they should choose UWI Cave Hill as an option for pursuing higher education as opposed to other places. So I think that there is a lot of work for the government to do in making persons a bit more knowledgeable about the existence of UE and the perks or the benefits of attending UE as opposed to other institutions.
I would say it's a lot different. Well, not a lot different, but it's different in Trinidad. I think us in Trinidad, our first go-to is UE. We also have UTT, which is an advantage, well, a perk for us. We can go to UTT as well. So I would say that in Trinidad, we have St. Augustine, lots of persons. You see like how you come to Cave Hill and it has a lot more Saint Lucians, Dominicans, Vincentians. It's the same thing in Trinidad, but a lot of Trinidadians go to the university in. So I wouldn't say there's a problem in gaining knowledge about avenues after CSEC, and they drive you to more international. Persons who go to international schools in Trinidad, I think it's more of a personal decision. You maybe have a nenen or auntie in America that you might want to go and live by, so you end up going to school there. But I think in Trinidad, first option is St. Augustine.
I guess this goes on to the bigger topic of brain drain. And for example, in Barbados, a lot of young persons feel as though they do not have opportunities to strive and to reach their goals that they have in life. However, I do feel as though there is a bit more of a movement towards attending University of the West Indies, particularly because of financing and the fact that international universities are ridiculously expensive. But I think, like I said, this does stem more so from persons just feeling as though if they go to the University of the West Indies, they would not be afforded the same opportunities as if they were to attend, like you said, the University of Illinois when it comes to your schools. But that's not the truth, and that's not facts.
Thank you, Shauna Lee.
Good morning. My name is Kasara Tate.
And my name is Amaya Ellis.
And we both go to Queen's College. The first question that I have to ask is, what do y'all think about the transition from the primary to the secondary level? When I mean this, we would like to know what y'all think about the common entrance and having the allocation system where they have to sit an examination to decide where their future is held.
I'm not sure how it is in Grenada or Trinidad, but in Barbados, we have to do an exam after class 4 in primary school, and then it determines the secondary school that we go to. So we were wondering if that is a fair process, if an exam alone should determine our secondary education, or if you think that it is not fair and that it might hinder.
Okay, so I personally have mixed feelings about it. So in Grenada, after grade 6, because we go up to grade 6, you do CPA, we have CPA. And then based on your performance and your ranking, you go to, so if you score high, you might go to the top secondary school or whatnot. Then after a while, they changed the criteria and they started zoning persons. So if you live in St. Andrew, they're gonna put you in a school in St. Andrew as opposed to St. George's, which is the town. However, last year, the government they essentially said it doesn't matter how you place in CPA, everybody going to secondary school. But I also have an issue with that because then it's a lot of strain for teachers because it's like, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's nothing to really work towards. If you know you're gonna be going to secondary school anyways, like you could just, I'm in primary school, I could just rock back and wait until I reach secondary school. And then a lot of the teachers, because I come from a family of educators. My mom is a teacher, my father is a teacher, my 2 sisters are teachers, my aunt is a teacher, my uncle is a teacher. So hearing it from their perspective, it is very difficult to deal with these students who is like, okay, it doesn't matter if I get this wrong or right. It doesn't matter if I understand this or not. I know I'm going to secondary school, so I don't have to bother with you. I think that is a very slippery slope to go down to. I think there still needs to have some form of control mechanism. What I don't agree with in terms of the original zoning is the fact that you rank these schools to make me feel like, oh, if I pass for XYZ school, I'm not up there, or I don't really smart, or that sort of thing. So I think in terms of that, we need to rework it. Rework it to what? I'm not sure, but I think that kind of stigma kind of carries on with persons because I won't lie, back home in Grenada, there are certain schools that, and I say we, because when I was smaller, I used to do it too. We used to look down on certain schools, and it's like, oh, no, you can't, whoa. But I don't think that is fair to persons who attend that school because at the end of the day, the teachers are equally qualified, the students, everybody have a potential, and you can still make something out of it. So for me, I have very mixed feelings about the whole keeping down and just letting everybody go or doing an exam in order to pass. But I think in terms of the CPA, I don't know. I think it's still a good mechanism to have in there, but maybe just like CXC, they can try to modify it a bit more to allow for persons with different learning styles because, children and so on. But yeah.
Could I just interject for 1 second? I think with CPEA, and if anybody in the audience knows better, this CPEA is something that St. Lucia would have recently undertaken in terms of their examinations from moving to primary to secondary, and I think that is a big step in terms of having a more inclusive education process. Because for us at least, it is more than just the exam that determines where the students are allocated, which school the students are allocated to, but there are actual practicals, there are actual assessments, SBAs that lead up to the examination. So I think it's a lot more inclusive education-wise as compared to common entrance. You sit down in the school for 2 days, you write general science, you write maths, you write English, you get your 80s and your 90s, and you go about your day. So yeah.
I would say in Trinidad, SCA, I have mixed feelings, and I think it's a rig. We don't write science and social studies. We only focus on math, English, that's it. So if you fail math, you're definitely getting zone. If you fail English, you're definitely getting zone 2. Also, the government has something called 20%. So I'm a Baptist, I go to a Baptist school. Primary Baptist school, I go to a secondary Baptist school. I wanted to go to a Baptist school, but I'm Anglican. You know what I didn't get? The Baptist school. Because I am not in the church, the Baptist church. It's a rig. So everybody at SCA does not have a fair chance. What I would say, though, is I strongly believe that it should stay. Because you can't just have a transition for free. between primary secondary school. I can't just, as Karina said, if I let everybody go, then what am I working towards? What am I developing? What, you know what I mean? So you can't just let everybody go. But as I said, it needs to be revamped. It needs to be modernized because this math and English thing, and then we have ELA as well, English language arts. We have to write 1,000 stories, they pick 10, and your best 10 goes forward. If you fail that as well, you get zoned. So it's everything that, you know, it's just a strong stigma about SEA. Your neighbor asking you, what school you pass for? Somebody asking you, what school you pass for? Everybody in your business. And you now shame to say, well, I passed for my last choice because you get 4 choices. Your top 2 are basically the prestigious schools. And then you start to go down because you're thinking that, well, these are the lesser schools and everybody in your business because you shame to say you went to X, Y, and Z school because it's a last choice. But no, as Karina said, everybody in the school should be equally qualified. The teachers, that is. Everybody should have the same curriculum. At the end of the day, you're learning the same things, I hope. So it shouldn't be a case where you're ashamed to say, oh, because you didn't get into a specific school, you're at a disadvantage or you're not learning the same thing. So I think I have mixed feelings. It's a rig. It will always, I don't think it will change anytime soon. I honestly don't think it will change anytime soon, but we need to advocate for that 20% nonsense and the maths and English thing alone. Students are tired of it, and we need to break the stigma about it because I don't want everybody in my business to call them mad dance because I passed for. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's my honest opinions about it.
If I answer this question, we'll be here the whole day. So all I'm going to say is, for me, I think that my main problem with our transition from primary to secondary is the fact that we go from doing math and English to 13 subjects, and that is a ridiculous stress on all of our children today. There's no way I went from doing just math and English to doing math, English, science, food and nutrition. Then there's 3 different sciences, PE, then this. It's very stressing. So that's my main problem with the transition.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. I am Maya Sobers. I go to Alexandra. I would say I have 2 questions. The first one would be about stigma surrounding certain subjects, because from my career choice, I want to go into performing arts and theater and that kind of thing. And I know for sure I have to either go overseas to get that, and I don't think I should. I think that I should be able to access whatever I want to do locally. And like I said, there's a stigma definitely surrounding it, because a lot of teachers always ask me, are you sure? And I say yes, because that's what I like to do. And I know that career may not be the most sustainable or the most consistent, but I know that's what I for sure want to do, because at least there was at one point I wanted to be a vet. I said, okay, never mind, no. So I switched and I wanted to do my passion. So my question, I would say, is how would you start to reduce said stigma? Because I think that performing and like theater and music is something that everybody gravitates towards, because the first thing you listen to when like in a bad mood, when you're happy, is music. That's the first thing you gravitate towards. So I don't think that me choosing something around that should have a stigma in the first place, because I think it's a comfort zone for everyone in this room. That is the first thing you gravitate towards, which is music or a movie. It makes you feel good. So how would you start to like desensitize that stigma?
I would look at even the stigma, I would look at the fact that everyone tends to have an opinion on what you should do. And really and truly it's supposed to be what you want to do. For example, he would have said that he was advised when it came to the subjects he was supposed to do, and he was advised poorly. So I think before we even look at that, we have to look at within ourselves and see what it is we want, do what we want, as long as it is right. Let me say that. So when it comes to stigma, we then just have to just let persons know, well, despite this, but there is a way to do it. It has been proven. As you said, whenever I'm sad, whenever I'm feeling down, the first thing I do is turn on music. So you just have to explain yourself, and I think that eventually it is not going to be something that's done overnight, but as long as you do what you want and you're happy, I think that's the most important thing.
Same. So I think that's exactly where you need to start. So when people say, well, why are you doing performing arts, or what's that? You make it a bit more relatable for them. Okay, you like watching movies. You think the people in the movies just get up one day and decide they want to act? I mean, probably some of them did, but I'm pretty sure that some of them also had some form of exposure to actual formal performing arts stuff. The people that write movies and plays and skits and all these things, they would have gotten some form of formal education for it, I'm sure. Also, you don't actually have to travel anywhere. The University of the West Indies has a faculty of culture, creative and performing arts. It's just across the road. So yeah, you could stay right here and own your skills.
Yeah, I would say big up to the SCCPA, the faculty. I'm not sure if you're aware that we had a faculty. Yeah, so I would say start with you be the change in the region. If you come to the FCCPA and obtain a bachelor's in performing arts and stuff, I personally know someone from Trinidad who did first class honors. And if that's what you want to do, you think about ideas in which you can start creating an environment for performing arts and creative arts in the region, in Barbados. And who knows, use social media, use different things to expose yourself, record yourself. Here, the dance, record yourself dance. I don't know if you have to gain the confidence, record yourself dancing, post it on social media, try and build up a platform for yourselves to gain exposure. So maybe somebody at the end of the day would see you and be like, yeah, this is what you do. As I said, I do music as well, and that's how a lot of our students, they get exposure because somebody see them somewhere playing pan, playing drums on a video recording, and they get that exposure somehow. But I would say there's the FCCPA faculty here, there's music in Trinidad, there's faculty creative and performing arts in Trinidad as well. Utilize the local resources. You don't have to go too far, it's across the road.
I would say my second question would be in terms of time management, when you mentioned that we go from math to English to 13 subjects right away, and it can get very overwhelming. And right now, as in Cape, I would say it does if you don't have proper time management skills and being able to manage your time wisely, it can get overwhelming. So what would you say are some tips and different sort of techniques in terms of managing your time?
Do not procrastinate. That's all I'm going to say for the most part. Don't procrastinate. When you get something, do it as soon as possible. And yeah.
One thing I would say is you have to know yourself. I could make 1,000 schedules. I will break it. What I would say, you have to know yourself. You have to know how organized you are. I will be studying and I will make some time to fit in football, cricket, or something. That's just how I am, but at the end of the day, I get it done. So you have to know yourself. If you know you are strict with schedules, make a schedule and, allocate time for breaks and not trying to be flustered, because you will get flustered. If you think Cape hard, when you start to hit your bachelor's degree and stuff, it will get a bit frustrating. So try and make a schedule on top of the schedule that university has for you, and try to include your music, your art, your dance, or whatever makes you happy. Try and increase your dopamine levels. Eat some ice cream, eat a snack, or get something to basically release the stress a little bit off the academics.
Okay, so what we're gonna do right now is just want to give a note that after those persons that we have standing lined up for the questions, we're gonna end it off because we do have some panelists that need to run very quickly. So we're just going to allow you guys to go forward with your questions. What I can ask to do to help, speed up the process a bit is to ask 2 questions at once, have the panelists answer very quickly, briefly, and to the best of their ability, and then we move forward. That's okay? All right, lovely.
Good morning, all. My name is Jonicia Taylor. I am a 6th-year student at the Ellerslie School. And I have 2 questions on 2 of the different discussion points for today. The first one being strengthening regional institutions. And my first question is, how can CSC enhance its role in bridging the gap between secondary and tertiary education?
CSEC. Repeat the question for me, please.
And also, if possible, could you just ask the second one right away?
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, the first one is how can CSEC enhance their role in bridging the gap between secondary and tertiary education? And the second question is based on the addressing the literacy and numeracy challenges. What are the main factors contributing to low literacy and numeracy rates during this transformation from primary to secondary school?
Okay, thank you for that question. I would say CSEC as a governing body should foster connections with higher education entities and secondary schools and stuff like that. Well, secondary schools to universities and tertiary and higher level education. Because yes, we write in CSEC, we get in 8-9 subjects, and as somebody said, 8-9 subjects of something that they don't want to do specifically. But if CSEC can foster linkages with universities, find out what programs they have offered at university, and find out what are the requirements for these subjects and what persons want to do, it can basically not only focus on the exam, but before the exam, this is what I want to do, this is what I like, this is what I'm going to get to doing, so it can ease slightly, the tension between the transition. So when I get into first year, first semester, I'm not like, oh boy, I didn't know anything about this. This is not what I signed up to do. You have an idea from the beginning or prior to coming to university with that linkage that CSEC and the university has more workshops, more career days, more, you know what I mean? So I think that's one avenue that it can take. I can't remember the next question.
Okay, so in relation to the last question, it went back to the point that we raised earlier about early childhood education and the fact that it's not really taken seriously in the region. In kindergarten, you ask a child, what's your favorite color? And he say 1. And to us, it's like, oh, he's just a child, he'll learn. We just take it as a joke instead of saying, let me correct you, and so it's to the point where you reach the primary school and you don't know the basics required to excel later on. Now you're in grade 6 and you don't remember your 2 times tables. You don't know these things, and then these problems persist. And again, it goes back to destigmatizing certain disabilities, because sometimes you just may have a learning disability that would require a bit more attention. Back home, we have something called a special ed school. And once you reach in special ed, that is it. Everybody just feel like, oh, special ed is only for persons with some kind of physical disability or so. But sometimes that is the form of attention that you require. So I think we need to place a bit more emphasis on early childhood education to improve the numeracy and literacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kenneth. I am the deputy head boy of Harrison College. So you mentioned standardizing the sixth form or CAPE across the Caribbean region. But do you think that the problems or rather the weak spots should be ironed out before we take that step? For example, the thorough grading of papers and clearly outlining the grading scale, 1s and 2s, and what it actually equates to, or even the regrading of papers, thorough regrading of the papers, because I know right now they just go over the marks that are allocated to make sure it adds up.
Yeah, I think that's a very weak point for CXC, because why every year before an exam we're hearing a paper leak in Trinidad, a paper leak in Guyana, a paper leak in Jamaica? What's up with that? Like, seriously, why does that happen every single year? I remember in my year during CAPE, we had a protest because CXC, I think they had increased the fees for us to get a remark or something like that. They switch up the format of the exam. We only had to do multiple choice, and that was it. So our SRC led a protest and whatnot. But I think that those are very weak points that CXC needs to adjust. They need to go back to the drawing board. They need to have a bit more transparency, a bit more regional input into how exactly do they get these things. Let us hear from the examiners themselves. What do they look for before the exam? We don't want that post-exam breakdown to say, oh, 10 people or 10% of the region answered the question in this way, but that's not really what we was looking for. we need a little, maybe if they could do virtual, like go through a past paper for us, the actual examiners who are responsible for marking, not the people who put together the syllabus. Or we need to hear from the examiners themselves. What are they looking for? What should we do? What should we? Also, another point is that when you change a syllabus, you need to provide guidance to the persons who would be teaching it. My little brother did CXE this year, and he came back home after his electrical installation exam, which is his favorite subject. And he was like, half of this exam, we don't know what that is. We never heard about it. And then afterwards, the teacher had to say, well, this is this, but this is what I taught you guys, but this is not what CXE was looking for. We don't know what happened there. So I think there needs to be a bit more support and more in-person guidance from CXE.
Thank you so much, Karina. What I want to do now is, and thank you for the question, what I want to do is to just take a brief moment for us to excuse one of our panelists. He needs to head out to an exam, and we are all students, so we understand the importance of exams. So I want to thank Carlin for attending today. I want to thank him for his insights. And we wish you the best of luck on your exam. But so as we wrap up, we'll take the final few questions, and following that, we'll have our vote of thanks, and we have some just light refreshments for y'all down in the, well, we call it the pit, but we will direct y'all to them following the discussion. So,
good morning. My name is Nathan, and I attend Commonwealth. So my question is, do you think that CXC is introducing and maintaining subjects that reflects the dynamic needs of the Caribbean and more so the global stage?
No. I think that, as we often refer to as core subjects, should be maintained. However, there are things that the country needs, a specific country may need. And I know persons advocate for standardization of the subjects across the Caribbean. Every country offers the same thing, every institution offers the same thing, but I think that there are specific ways in which CSEC can start implementing specific subject areas based on the needs of a specific country, like agriculture. You know what I mean? Dominica has a lot of agriculture, yeah? So I think that CSEC should implement those agri-science courses in Dominica, maybe tourism in Trinidad, because we lack that in Trinidad, you know what I mean? So try and get more specific base and just not do subjects because that is what CSEC say I have to do and that is what you should do. So more emphasis on strategy and logic. We need to work with a lot of logic here. We're just doing things because we have to do it. It was there ever since, so we continue doing it. But at no point somebody going to step down and say, we had to forget about 2000 exams, 1990, and try to modernize it. You know what I mean? So I think that should take place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Duran Barre of the Alexandra School. My question stems from the vocational aspect of today's debate. Our panelist from Trinidad has mentioned vocational education at his secondary level. I am originally from Jamaica, in which we have the Heart Foundation, which helps to rehabilitate the academically poor, and it focuses mostly on vocational education. So my question is, what do you think can be done in both of your respectful countries or in Barbados to help rehabilitate the academically poor vocational-wise?
Yeah, as I said, do you all have like a tech ed in the secondary school levels in Barbados? TVET at secondary school levels. Yeah, so I think that's a key part. Even at the primary school level, we had something called 4-H, which is like build agriculture, building troughs, building engineering ways in which we can conserve space but still stay green, and those kind of small, significant avenues can be taken to, better develop tech ed, TVET in the primary school levels play more emphasis and make it more serious, fund programs at the secondary school level and even after, make it more accessible for students?
So in Grenada, outside of the formal school system, we also have like programs like the Empower program to get young persons who are normally on the block involved in some of these programs. But it starts by stopping treat TVET subjects as a punishment. So you're not doing good in Spanish, you're not doing good in English, let me put you in woodwork or something like that. That would go a long way in destigmatizing and getting persons to be a bit more open and embracing their skills in the relevant fields.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brianna Hardy, and I'm a second-year law student here. My question speaks to learning disabilities. So I know you briefly mentioned learning disabilities, and you spoke to destigmatizing learning disabilities. Now, I'm going to make a point, then I'm going to ask a question. So we often speak to destigmatization, and we know the first step is education. And I find everywhere there is a gross misunderstanding and education about learning disabilities generally. There's the negative preconceptions like, oh, you have dyslexia, so you can't do this. I think most of my classmates know severely dyslexic, Dean's List for law first year. It does not matter. But I think my issue with constantly speaking to destigmatization is when we think of it, we think, oh, well, she has a learning disability and she's doing well. But I find we don't have it a lot where it needs to be. So for example, teachers. A lot of teachers, they either A, do not recognize the signs of learning disability, because it's actually our teachers training college, they have like a little bit of the curriculum on learning disabilities, but it's not completely accurate to how it's diagnosed in young women, for example, etc. So they can't recognize these signs, and moreover, there's still the stigma around it. And also, in our education level, yes, we speak about destigmatization and providing resources for those with learning disabilities, but we don't really speak to educating the peers around those with learning disabilities to educate them about learning disabilities. So what would you suggest implementing to better this understanding of learning disabilities on a whole?
So the first step I would say is having actual proper training for teachers. Back then, teaching used to be a profession that you aspire towards. These days, teaching is just a means to an end. So it's like, you'll start off teaching for a couple of years until you build up enough money to go off to do what you actually really want to do. So sometimes you just finish your CAPE exams, you have a CAPE certificate, and you can apply to be a teacher without undergoing any training. And when I say training, I don't mean in terms of the content, I mean in terms of soft skills, how to deal with students. There's a disruptive child in your class, and the first thing you think about is bringing them to the principal's office to get a beating, as opposed to trying to find what is the root of the problem. Because like you said, people are not educated about it, so it's very easy to miss the early signs, and then later on it becomes an actual problem. So I think that there needs to be focused training by the professionals who have the accurate information to disseminate. And then once the teachers, I think because it's like a top-down approach, once the teachers are educated, then they can later inform the class, okay, well, and these are certain signs, these are stuff, this person, and this is what we should do, this is how we should treat them, we should give them a little bit more grace and that sort of stuff. I know back in Grenada, we recognize October as Child's Month. I think that's something everywhere. But in October specifically, we would learn about everything pertaining to the child. It may not be as focused and detailed as it should be or as we would like it to be, but it's still a step, but there's still more that we can do in terms of educating teachers and members of staff in properly dealing with cases like these things. And then also, it doesn't also have to be up to the person affected to educate the people around them. We can take an initiative and learn about it for ourselves so that we like to say ignorance is bliss, but it's really not.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Plant, Please keep it short.
I will. I promise I will. Good morning, everybody. It's just a comment that I wanted to make. I think we must understand that the education system does not run parallel to your career. I think that's obvious. I think it would have been mentioned earlier for academic advising and as well as career guidance. And it was something that we had back in Saint Lucia, back in secondary school. Jean-Luc and I go way back, so he knows that too very well. I think one thing that we must mention in that whilst we persist or we continue to go for education reform, we must understand as well that there must be a reform of the workforce, because the needs of the education system must meet that of the workforce. And I listened earlier to young people who are pivoting away from the normal lawyer. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a medical doctor. You heard, I want to enter to be a vet. I aspire to be in the field of performing arts. But whilst we are modifying and altering the education system to accommodate them to pursue their degrees, that we do have a faculty of culture of performing arts, where in the workforce in Barbados, in Saint Lucia, in Trinidad and Tobago, that after they study, they can come back and give to that workforce. Where is it? So I think that the ministries of education, Ministry of maybe public service, and those who are in charge of the private sector must understand and analyze a workforce that will meet the needs of current young people today, which will not force them away and persist in brain drain. Now, I really wanted the young man from the Barbados National Students Council here, and maybe as his counterparts, the young people here, that you must continuously advocate to have a workforce that will meet your demands, particularly if you want to give back to your country. As a regionalist, I would hate that young people would have to go to give their skills and services overseas as opposed to their country. And we have a lot in this country that you can offer, and particularly by extension, the region. So I think that we must, moving forward, look to have a workforce that will meet the needs of an education system, as well as an education system meeting the needs of the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alans. And I really wish that we had more time today, because brain drain is a very important discussion that we should have in many of these youth spaces, especially when it relates to education and employment. But sadly, we don't have the time today, so hopefully we can continue these discussions within our circles, back in our schools, on our student councils, and with our parents, with our leaders. I mean, you all are a very bright bunch. I'm sure that you all will be the next ministers of Barbados, so keep that in mind. Keep what Alan said in mind. Keep our discussions here in mind today.
I just have one thing to say about Alan's point. And he says to the young people to continue to advocate, continue to volunteer your assistance to develop in the country. And I think one way in which ministers can utilize brain drain to their advantage is fostering diaspora connections. We can't prevent brain drain, to be very honest with you. And as I said, people would leave, especially coming from the Caribbean. We might see it as a disadvantage with infrastructure, as resources and all of that. So people would leave. What I would say is that diaspora connections is an important part to play in the development. So I grew up in Trinidad. I study in Trinidad. The government sent me to school, but I leave Trinidad and Tobago and I go on and I forget about Trinidad on the whole. What the government can do is foster diaspora connections with a community that is not based in the home country, but allow this community wherever they are in the US, Canada, to basically reinvest and make contributions to their home country so that these persons with the knowledge that they have, I send you to school so you are, educated about a specific something now. Come back, come back and share some knowledge. Even if you didn't stay, I will provide you with, some housing for a couple months, have workshops and do stuff. Get incentives for these persons to, to be enlightened, to come back and want to come back to their country to develop the youth, because they reach a stage in their life, they say, Trinidad have nothing for me, Saint Lucia have nothing for me, so why coming back for? So the government can strengthen these diaspora connections for persons who leave to really invest in the country.
Thank you so much, Akeem. And we have our final question.
Good morning. My name is Esther Ford, and I'm from the Springer Memorial School. I wanted to also touch on teachers and the important role that they play. It was mentioned how important math and English was. And at my school, there's a resource program that you could join from 3rd to 5th form. We're talking about tertiary level now. I'm now in 6th form. That program was very beneficial to me. It was only for English. There wasn't any for math, so that was my downfall. Despite having challenges learning both math and English, I still got them back. But now that I'm in 6th form, it's really challenging. And I would just like to say or suggest that, you know, a teacher could be there also. I feel like that's an easy fix. That doesn't have to take years to happen. To put someone in place there for students who came from getting the extra help. That's all. Thank you.
So I think that if you guys have like a student council or so, that's something that you guys can petition for, or it doesn't even have to be a petition, it's a discussion that you guys can have with the principal to find out, you know, how the teachers can provide extra support. So I think that's also an easy fix.
One thing I would say is that in Trinidad, I know this. I live next to a school and there's a special needs child. The government provides a specific tutor, well-trained tutor for him to, you know, guide him through his secondary school life. And I also have one point to say about governments trying to implement, or ministries trying to implement peer teaching. I am saying peer teaching. Okay, so I am fresh out of university in biochemistry. I am of the age of majority of you. I'm 20. So I am young. I can relate. I wrote CSEC 3 years ago. I can relate more to the younger persons than senior education officer who wrote CSEC, I don't know how much years ago. You know, he's way ahead, and he has, the ones who know it are the ones who can relate to it, who experience it. Most recent peer teaching, I think that, and I teach math as well, I think students could relate to me as well. I could relate to students as well and try and get into their minds, because I know as well how the times are and how stressful it can be, because I am a student of the 21st century, so I can relate. So I think that's an initiative that could be taken up.
Good morning, I'm Yvette Eswick, Ministry of Education. I'm an education officer. I'm also the focal point for the Barbados National Student Council. And I just want to put it out there, this morning's session, the audience, the secondary school students, are CAPE students pursuing the Caribbean studies. And this area of focus directly relates to Module 2, regional integration. But there's something called experiential learning, where you are immersed in the situation, in the discussion, and you learn from that. And I hope the intent behind this discussion wasn't lost, that when you go away, when you look at that part of your Caribbean studies syllabus, that aspect of the syllabus that relates to that sociology syllabus as well, you can find points within, coming out of this discussion, which can assist you in writing your essays. So, is that so? Did you benefit this morning as it related to your Caribbean studies? I'm seeing some heads nod. So that's good, I understand. And do we have to have this as an annual event, looking at areas of your syllabus and having open discussion? Would that benefit you? Okay, so that is something. As the representative for the student councils, you have Janicia is here, who's on the committees. We have Jahim, who's here as part of the student advisors. Then that is something that we have our second vice president, who is also in the audience from St. Leonard's School. He's trying to hide. Then this will be one of our activities. I just need the feedback from the students. I need to know how you feel, how we best can serve you as a National Student Council. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Eswick. And I think this is something that I'm really appreciative that you did, because it shows that we are being recognized as young people for our potential, that our voices are not only being heard, but it's taken into consideration, and that things are actually being put in place to continue with our development and the development of our countries. So right now, what I will do is I will invite the president of the Dominican Students Association to the lectern to deliver a vote of thanks, and then we will head out for those light refreshments as promised.
So I'll keep it brief. I know we went over the scheduled time, but just to acknowledge, in the room we have UNICEF representative for the Eastern Caribbean, Jean-Benoit Maines. We have the Senior Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Henderson Wilshire, the UNICEF Adolescent Development Specialist online with us, Mr. Liston Scarrett, President of the Saint Lucian Students Association, Jean-Luc Constantine, representatives of the UWI Cave Hill Guild of Students, representative of other island associations, and the Barbados National Student Council, specially invited guests, your students, members of the media, and everyone else in the room. I would just like to thank you all so much for coming out to our session today. On behalf of the Dominican Students Association at UWI, the Saint Lucian Students Association, UNICEF, and the Barbados National Student Council, we really do hope that you enjoyed the session today with us, and we really do hope that you were able to learn more and apply to your studies moving further on when it comes to higher education and problems in our Eastern Caribbean region. I would like to extend a special thank you to our panelists, Ms. Karina Blash, from the president of Grensac, Mr. Akeem Morales, the president of TTSA, and Mr. Callan Aline, the first vice president of the Barbados National Students Council. Could you just give them a round of applause? And as we end here today, a very fruitful discussion, if I may add, I would just like to, remind you all to continue to advocate for these issues. We know the challenges, we know the different issues presenting themselves, and it's up to us to really advocate for that space. And I also want to urge our leaders, those in the positions, that when our students come to you, when our youth come to you with these ideas, these challenges that we are facing, that you actually don't place us in positions to hear our voice just as a form of tokenism to say that, okay, we have a student here, or we have a students' council, but actually when they put forth initiatives, when they put forth, solutions to these issues, that we really do take it seriously. And I think that would definitely benefit our individual countries and our region as a whole. So I'd once again like to thank everyone for your attendance, and I wish you all a safe travel back to where you're going, your schools, home, work, and thank you once again for coming.